The holographic mission board materialized in the center of the Interstellar Academy's assembly hall, and 3,000 cadets from 47 species fell silent. Maria Santos watched from the back row as the details scrolled across the shimmering display, her dark eyes scanning the text with practiced efficiency. Mission Epsilon 9, Resource Recovery. Location, Cathara Prime, Outer Rim. Classification, Extreme Hazard. Expected duration, 14 days. Survival probability, 8%. The whispers started immediately. Maria heard fragments in a dozen languages, warnings, fears, memories of the 5 previous missions that had vanished into Cathara Prime's toxic atmosphere. The planet was legendary at the Academy, not for glory, but for death. "They're not even pretending anymore," muttered Jax, a Vorian sitting beside her. His blue-tinted skin had paled to almost white. 8%. They might as well say 0. Maria leaned forward, reading the full brief. Cathara Prime. Atmospheric pressure 3 times Earth standard. Temperature swings of 60 degrees Celsius between day and night. Acid rain during storm season. Indigenous predators classified as hyper-aggressive, and an ecosystem so volatile that standard environmental suits failed within 48 hours. The previous missions had sent teams of specialists. None had returned. "This is a recovery mission in name only," announced Commander Chen, the Academy's Director of Operations. His weathered face showed no emotion as he addressed the crowd. "Command needs the geological survey data from Outpost Theta. The information is critical for mining operations in 3 adjacent systems. However, I will be direct with you all. This is effectively a suicide mission. We need a volunteer, but I expect none." The silence deepened. Maria felt her heartbeat quicken, not with fear, but with something she'd felt only a handful of times in her life. Recognition. This was hers. Her hand rose before she could second-guess herself. "Cadet Santos, please lower your hand." Commander Chen's voice was firm, but not unkind. "I don't think you understand." "Permission to speak, sir." Maria stood, her compact frame straightening with military precision. "Granted." "I understand perfectly, Commander. Cathara Prime has an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, liquid water, and an active ecosystem. Those aren't the characteristics of a death world. They're the characteristics of a challenging environment." She paused, letting her words settle. "I volunteer." The assembly hall erupted. Cadets from species across the galaxy turned to stare at the human who had just signed her own death warrant. Commander Chen raised his hand for silence. "Cadet Santos, my office now." The commander's office overlooked the Academy's training grounds, where cadets practiced in simulated environments that ranged from Arctic tundra to volcanic plains. Maria had excelled in every single one. "Sit," Chen gestured to a chair, then pulled up Maria's file on his desk display. "Maria Elena Santos. Top marks in wilderness survival, environmental adaptation, and crisis management. Bottom quartile in diplomatic protocol and theoretical xenobiology." He looked up. "You're 23 years old. Why are you so eager to die?" "I'm not eager to die, sir. I'm eager to succeed where others failed." "That's arrogance talking." "No, sir, it's experience." Maria met his gaze steadily. "I grew up on Aquarius Station, a water colony on a moon with 90% ocean coverage. We had storms that could flip a HAB module, sea creatures that could swallow a shuttle, and pressure differentials that killed 12 colonists my first year there." "That's different from—" "Is it?" Maria interrupted, then caught herself. "Apologies, sir, but every briefing I've read about Cathara Prime describes it as hostile because it doesn't fit standard colonization parameters. The atmosphere is too thick, the pressure too high, the weather too violent. But humans evolved on a planet with similar challenges. We're built for adaptation." Chen pulled up images of Cathara Prime. The planet's surface was a riot of deep purples and blacks, with massive storm systems swirling across its 3 continents. The previous teams were equipped with state-of-the-art environmental suits, military-grade weapons, and emergency extraction protocols. They lasted 60 hours at most. Because they tried to fight the planet instead of learning from it. Maria leaned forward. Sir, look at the casualty reports. Every team died when their suits failed or their shelters collapsed. They relied on technology to protect them from the environment instead of adapting to it. And you think you can adapt to a planet that killed 47 trained specialists? I think I can try, sir, and I think that's more than anyone else is offering. Commander Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying the young woman before him. Finally, he sighed. Your psychological evaluation flags you as unconventionally resilient with a high tolerance for isolation. That's military speak for doesn't play well with others. I work better alone, sir. Always have. Why? Maria considered the question. Because I don't have to worry about someone else's panic making bad decisions worse. In survival situations, fear kills more people than the environment does. You're not afraid of Cathara Prime? I'm terrified, sir. Maria's honesty seemed to surprise him. But fear is just information. It tells me to be careful, to pay attention, to respect what I'm dealing with. It doesn't tell me to quit. Chen turned back to his display, scrolling through mission parameters. If I approve this, and that's a significant if, you'll go alone. No team, no backup, no extraction until you signal mission complete or we lose your beacon. Understood. You'll have access to standard survival equipment, but I'm limiting your tech loadout. If your theory is correct, you'll need to adapt, not rely on gear that will fail. Yes, sir. And Santos, Chen's expression softened almost imperceptibly. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've sent hundreds of cadets on dangerous missions. This is the first time I've had to approve one I'm certain will result in a body bag. Maria stood and saluted. Then I'll make sure to prove you wrong, Commander. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Maria ignored the standard survival kit entirely and instead requisitioned items that made the supply officer's antennae quiver with confusion. Fishing line and hooks, a multi-tool with emphasis on utility over weaponry, water purification tablets rated for Earth's most contaminated zones, fire-starting equipment that worked in wet conditions, a solar charging array, and emergency rations designed for long-term nutrition rather than quick energy. Cadet, these items are unconventional, sir. So is my mission, she said. She also requested seeds, fast-growing vegetables that could handle environmental stress, and a basic medical kit focused on treating exposure rather than combat injuries. The quartermaster tried 3 times to add a plasma rifle to her loadout, and 3 times Maria declined. What will you defend yourself with? He finally asked. Respect for the local wildlife and a healthy sense of self-preservation. She paused. And this. She held up a machete-style blade her father gave her when she left Aquarius Station. It was well-worn, perfectly balanced, and had carved a path through more than one hostile jungle during her training. News of her deployment spread through the academy like wildfire. Some cadets thought she was brave. Most thought she was insane. A few understood she might be both. Cadet Kira Vex, a Thorsian with crystalline skin, caught her in the corridor the night before departure. Maria, why are you really doing this? Maria considered lying, offering some noble platitude about duty or discovery. Instead, she told the truth. Because I've never fit anywhere, Kira. Not on Aquarius, not here, not anywhere humans are supposed to thrive. But when I read about Cathara Prime, a place so harsh that everyone dies, I thought maybe that's where I belong. Maybe I'm meant for places that break everyone else. Kira's facets caught the hallway light, refracting it into rainbow patterns. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Or the most honest. They embraced briefly, and Maria felt the cool smoothness of her friend's crystalline shoulder. "Come back," she whispered. "I'll try." The transport pod was cramped and automated, designed to drop a single occupant with minimal fuss. Maria strapped herself in and watched through the viewport as the Academy fell away. The ship's AI provided a cheerful countdown to Cathara Prime's orbit. During the 7-hour journey, Maria reviewed everything she could find about the planet. The geological data was fascinating. Cathara Prime was rich in rare minerals, with deposits that could power entire star systems. The ecosystem was equally intriguing. Hyper-adaptive life forms that had evolved under extreme pressure, creating a food web of remarkable complexity. The previous mission reports made for grimmer reading. Team after team had followed the same pattern: land, establish shelter, attempts to reach Outpost Theta, encounter environmental or predatory challenges, suffer equipment failure, and die. Always the same sequence, just with slight variations in timing. Maria studied the final transmission from Mission Epsilon 4. The team leader, a decorated Vraxian commander, had recorded his last words while acid rain dissolved his shelter's roof. "We underestimated this place," he said, his voice steady despite impending death. "It doesn't fight you, it simply exists beyond our parameters. We brought our own world with us in suits and shields, and when those failed, we had nothing. If anyone tries again, don't make our mistake. Become part of Cathara Prime, or it will kill you like it killed us." Maria replayed that segment 3 times, committing the wisdom to memory. The pod shuddered as it hit Cathara Prime's upper atmosphere. Warning klaxons blared, pressure alerts, temperature spikes, atmospheric toxicity readings that flashed red. Maria silenced them all. The data was useful, but the panic wasn't. Through the viewport, she watched the planet reveal itself. Dark purple clouds roiled below, occasionally split by lightning that glowed an eerie green. Between the storm systems, she glimpsed the surface: black stone mountains, vast forests of something that might have been trees, and rivers that steamed even from orbit. It was objectively terrifying. It was also beautiful. The pod's vetrothrusters fired, fighting gravity and atmosphere in equal measure. They descended through the clouds, and visibility dropped to 0. The pod shook violently, its hull creaking under pressure. Maria braced herself, breathing steadily, counting seconds between each rattling impact. Then, suddenly, they were through. The clouds parted, and Cathara Prime spread out below her in all its alien glory. The forest was indeed purple, deep violet canopies stretching to the horizon. The rivers carved silver pathways through black stone. And in the distance, barely visible, stood Outpost Theta, a cluster of metal structures slowly being reclaimed by the planet. The computers announced landing in 30 seconds. Maria gripped her harness and watched the ground rush up to meet her. Impact came hard. The pod bounced twice, carving a trench through the violet forest floor before finally coming to rest at a 40-degree angle. Emergency systems hissed and sparked. The viewport showed nothing but tangled vegetation pressed against the hull. Maria unstrapped, checked herself for injuries, none, and began her pre-exit checklist. She pulled on a light jacket rather than an environmental suit. She strapped the machete to her belt. She shouldered her pack, which contained everything she'd requisitioned and nothing more. At the door release, she paused and pulled out a small recording device. Time for the first log. Day 1, Hour 0. Cadet Maria Santos reporting from Cathara Prime. I've landed approximately 3 kilometers from Outpost Theta. Current plan: establish shelter, assess local resources, survive the first night. She smiled at the camera. And if I'm lucky, prove that the deadliest planet in this sector is just really, really misunderstood. She hit the door release. The hatch hissed open, and Cathara Prime rushed in. The air was thick, she felt it immediately, like breathing through warm honey. The pressure made her ears pop. The humidity was oppressive, instantly coating her skin in moisture. And the smell, rich organic decay mixed with something sharp and metallic. Maria took a deep breath, letting her lungs adjust. It burned slightly, but no worse than her first deep dive in Aquarius Station's lower levels. She stepped out onto alien soil. The ground beneath her boots was spongy, covered in a moss-like growth that released spores with each step. The forest around her was dim despite it being midday according to her chronometer. The violet canopy blocked most sunlight, creating a perpetual twilight. Something howled in the distance. It was answered by a chorus of other sounds, clicks, warbles, deep bass rumbles that she felt in her chest. Maria checked her compass, oriented herself towards the outpost, and began walking. Behind her, the pod's emergency beacon activated automatically, pulsing a signal that no one expected to retrieve except to recover her remains. Ahead, Cathara Prime waited to see if this human was different from all the others it had killed. Spoiler alert, she was. Maria's first full day on Cathara Prime taught her 3 critical lessons. The planet's atmosphere wasn't toxic, it was just rich. The temperature swings weren't deadly, they were predictable. And the local fauna wasn't mindlessly aggressive, they were territorial and intelligent. She learned these lessons while building her first shelter in a clearing about 2 kilometers from the crash site. The location was strategic, elevated enough to avoid potential flooding, protected by a ring of massive trees that could serve as windbreaks, and close to a stream that ran with clear water over black stones. The water was her first real test. Maria knelt beside the stream and dipped her fingers in. The liquid was cooler than expected and had a faint mineral smell. She pulled out a basic testing kit, not the advanced sensors that previous teams had relied on, but simple chemical strips that had been used on Earth for centuries. The water was slightly acidic with a pH of 5.8, comparable to rainwater or weak coffee. Previous mission reports had classified it as highly corrosive, but those reports had been written by species from low-acid worlds where even slight acidity was dangerous. For a human who'd evolved drinking from streams that ranged from pH 5 to pH 9, this was well within tolerance. Maria filled her canteen, added a purification toplet out of caution rather than necessity, and drank. The water tasted strange, mineral-heavy with a faint metallic tang, but it was perfectly drinkable. She made a note in her log. Previous teams' corrosive water is actually just normal stream water for human parameters. Building the shelter took most of the afternoon. Maria used her machete to cut sturdy branches from the violet trees. The wood was dense and slightly flexible, perfect for construction. She created a simple lean-to against a particularly massive tree trunk, waterproofed it with broad leaves that overlapped like shingles, and dug a small trench around the perimeter for drainage. It wasn't fancy, but it was functional. More importantly, it used local materials rather than relying on technology that could fail. As the sun began to set, Cathara Prime's star was dimmer than Earth's, casting everything in deep purple shadows. Maria built a fire pit. The previous teams had used chemical heaters and energy shields. She used rocks from the streambed, arranged them in a circle, and filled the center with dried plant matter she'd collected. The fire starting kit took 3 tries in the humidity, but eventually flames caught. The local wood burned hot and clean, producing minimal smoke but plenty of heat. Maria smiled at the crackling fire and pulled out a ration bar for dinner. That's when she felt the eyes on her. Every survival instructor she'd ever had taught the same lesson. When you feel watched, you probably are. Maria didn't freeze or panic. She slowly reached for her machete and shifted her position so her back was against the tree trunk. "I know you're there," she said calmly, voice carrying across the clearing. "This is my camp and I'm not looking for trouble." For a long moment, nothing. Then the underbrush rustled and something emerged that made Maria's breath catch. The creature was massive, easily the size of a grizzly bear, but built differently. It moved on 6 legs, 4 powerful rear legs and 2 smaller, more articulated front limbs. Its body was covered in scales that shifted from deep black to dark purple depending on the angle of the light. The head was almost reptilian, with eyes that glowed a soft amber and a mouth full of teeth designed for tearing. Maria recognized it from the briefing files. A shadow maw, the apex predator of Cathara Prime's forests. Previous teams had lost members to these creatures. They were described as hyper-aggressive and impossible to deter. The Shadow Maw approached the edge of the firelight, its eyes fixed on Maria. She remained still, keeping her hand on the machete but not raising it. Threatening an apex predator was a good way to trigger an attack response. "You're beautiful," Maria said softly. "Absolutely terrifying, but beautiful. This is your territory, isn't it? I'm in your hunting ground." The creature tilted its head, a gesture that reminded Maria of a curious dog. Its nostrils flared, sampling her scent. Maria realized it probably had never encountered a human before. She smelled wrong, moved wrong, acted wrong according to its experience of prey. "You're not food," she continued, maintaining eye contact without staring aggressively. "And I'm not competing for resources. I'm just a visitor who wants to share this space." The Shadow Maw took another step forward. Maria could see the individual scales now, the way its muscles moved under its skin. It was clearly well-fed, not desperate or starving, just curious. Slowly, Maria reached into her pack and pulled out a ration bar. The previous teams had tried to scare predators away with weapons and noise. Maria tried something different. She unwrapped the bar and tossed it gently toward the creature. It landed about halfway between them. The Shadow Maw's head snapped down, tracking the movement. It sniffed the air again, then moved forward and delicately picked up the ration bar with its front limbs. One bite, and the bar was gone. The creature sat back on its haunches, making a sound that Maria felt more than heard, a deep rumble that vibrated through the ground. "Good, right? Yeah, those things are packed with protein and calories. We make them for long deployments in harsh environments." Maria slowly sat down, making herself smaller and less threatening. "You can stay if you want. I'm not going anywhere tonight." For the next hour, they watched each other across the fire. Maria ate her own dinner, drank her water, and performed her evening routine with slow, predictable movements. The Shadow Maw remained at the edge of the clearing, observing with those amber eyes. Finally, as full darkness fell and Cathara Prime's 2 moons rose above the canopy, the creature circled the camp once and settled down about 10 meters away, still watching, still alert, but no longer aggressive. "I'm gonna call you Echo," Maria said, banking the fire for the night, "because I think you're as curious about me as I am about you." Echo's eyes reflected the dying firelight like twin stars. Maria climbed into her shelter, machete within easy reach, and activated her recording device for the evening log. Day 1, evening. Successfully established base camp. Water is drinkable, shelter is functional, and I've made contact with a local Shadow Maw. She panned the camera toward Echo, whose silhouette was barely visible in the moonlight. Previous reports classified these creatures as hyper-aggressive, but I think that's a misunderstanding. They're territorial and intelligent, which means they can learn that not everything new is a threat. She turned the camera back to herself. The key to surviving here isn't superior firepower or technology, it's communication, understanding what the planet is telling you and responding appropriately. Maria smiled tiredly. Night 1 complete, still alive. Commander Chen is going to owe me an apology. She ended the recording, cued it for transmission when her satellite link next connected, and settled into her sleeping bag. Outside, Echo kept watch. Maria didn't realize it yet, but she'd just done something no previous team had managed. She'd made an ally on Cathara Prime. The next 3 days established a pattern. Maria would wake with the dawn, tend to her fire, and eat breakfast while Echo watched from a respectful distance. She'd spend the mornings exploring, mapping the area, identifying edible plants and safe water sources. The afternoons were for practical work, improving the shelter, processing resources, documenting the ecosystem. And every evening, she'd share a portion of her rations with Echo. By day 4, the Shadow Maw was following her openly during her explorations, staying about 20 meters back but clearly accompanying her. When Maria approached a stream to refill her water, Echo would settle nearby and wait. When she stopped to rest, Echo would scout the perimeter. It was protection, Maria realized. Echo had claimed her as part of his territory, and on Cathara Prime, that meant something significant. On day 5, Maria finally reached Outpost Theta. The facility was larger than she'd expected, a cluster of buildings constructed from prefabricated modules, now overtaken by Cathara Prime's aggressive vegetation. Violet vines covered most surfaces, and the local moss had created a thick carpet across what had once been clear ground. Echo refused to enter the clearing where the outpost stood. He paced at the tree line, making an agitated rumbling sound. "Death smell?" Maria asked. Echo's ears flattened against his head, and what she'd learned was confirmation. The previous teams had died here. Of course the predator could smell it. "I understand. You don't have to come in. I'll be careful." Maria approached the main building cautiously. The door hung open, twisted on its hinges. Inside, the air was stale but not toxic. Emergency lighting still functioned, powered by some backup system that had outlasted its intended users. The interior told a story of slow disaster. Maria found the main control room first, where data terminals sat dormant under layers of dust. The previous team's personal effects were still scattered around: data pads, empty ration packages, environmental suits in various states of disrepair. She found the logs in the station's computer system, which activated when she provided her academy credentials. The last entry was dated 14 months ago. Day 47, Team Lead Dr. Yoshida recording. "Our situation is critical. The environmental suits have failed. Humidity and pressure exceeded design tolerances. We've attempted to adapt to the local atmosphere, but most species on the team cannot survive without technological support." Maria scrolled through more entries, watching the team's situation deteriorate. They'd run out of specialized rations, their water purification system had broken down. The local wildlife had learned to avoid their weapons, but had continued to test the facility's perimeter. The final entry was heartbreaking. "We made a fundamental error. We tried to bring our own environment with us instead of adapting to what we found. Perhaps a different approach, but it's too late for us. To whoever finds this, Cathara Prime is not a death world. It's simply a world for which we were unprepared." Maria sat in the control room for a long time, reading about people who died because they couldn't do what came naturally to her: adapt. She found the data cores easily. They were in a sealed vault exactly where the mission brief said they'd be. Geological surveys, mineral compositions, ecosystem analyses, all the information Command needed to justify mining operations in the adjacent systems. Maria downloaded everything to her portable drive and backed it up twice. Mission technically complete, but she didn't call for extraction. Instead, she explored the rest of the facility with new eyes. The power system still worked, fed from a geothermal tap. The structure was sound despite the cosmetic damage. The hydroponic gardens were overgrown but could be restored. The medical bay had supplies that hadn't degraded. This wasn't just a tomb, it was potential. Maria spent the rest of the day clearing debris and assessing what could be salvaged. She found bunks that could be repaired, equipment that could be restored, space that could become functional again. As sunset approached, she stepped outside and found Echo waiting at the tree line, clearly relieved to see her emerge. "What do you think, buddy? Should we make this place a home?" Echo tilted his head, considering. Then he took one cautious step into the clearing, then another. He sniffed the air suspiciously but continued forward until he was standing beside Maria. "Good call. Let's show them this planet isn't a graveyard. It's just selective about who gets to live here." That night, Maria set up her recording device in the outpost's control room. Echo lay in the doorway, a massive guardian between her and the alien wilderness. Day 5, evening. I've reached Outpost Theta and recovered the data cores. Mission parameters satisfied. She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But I'm requesting permission to establish a permanent research station here. Cathara Prime has been classified as uninhabitable due to environmental failures and biological incompatibility with the previous survey team's species composition." She gestured to the facility around her. "But for humans, who evolved on a high-gravity, high-pressure world with similar atmospheric conditions, this planet is challenging but manageable. I believe Cathara Prime could become a gateway for understanding how to utilize worlds previously considered worthless." Echo yawned in the background, showing all his impressive teeth. "I've also made significant progress in understanding local wildlife behavior. The apex predators classified as hyper-aggressive are actually territorial and capable of complex social learning. With proper approach protocols, they can become allies rather than threats. Maria looked directly at the camera. I know this mission was supposed to be a recovery operation. I know everyone expected me to die here, but I'm not dying, Commander. I'm thriving. And I think this planet deserves a second chance, one with people who can actually survive on it. She ended the recording and sent it. 2 days later, when the satellite relay window opened, the response came through. Commander Chen appeared on her screen, looking older and more tired than she remembered. Cadet Santos, or should I say Lieutenant Santos, your promotion came through an hour ago. He paused. I owe you an apology. I was wrong about Cathara Prime, and I was wrong about your chances. The Council is extremely interested in your reports. Also, your videos have apparently gone viral across the galactic net. There's some alien child on Tharsis that wants a Shadow Maw as a pet now. His parents are furious. Maria laughed, despite herself. Commander Chen's expression became serious. You're approved for extended operations. Supply drops are authorized monthly. And Maria, there are already 23 volunteers requesting transfer to your location, humans who want to prove that we belong on worlds like this. Send me people who understand that we are guests here, not conquerors, people who can adapt. Understood. And Santos, thank you for not dying. It would have been very inconvenient paperwork. 6 months after Maria Santos landed on Cathara Prime, the planet hosted its first permanent settlement. What had begun as a solo survival mission had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history, a thriving, multi-species colony on a classified death world. The transformation had started small. The first additional colonist arrived 3 months after Maria's initial landing, a human named James Park, a marine biologist from Earth's Pacific colonies who specialized in extreme environment adaptation. He'd watched Maria's videos and recognized the ecosystem's potential. Maria met his shuttle with Echo beside her. James stepped out, took one look at the massive Shadow Maw and grinned. You weren't kidding about the locals being friendly. Friendly is a strong word. Echo tolerates humans who respect his space and bring. The year anniversary of Maria's landing was celebrated with a festival that drew visitors from across 3 sectors. The colony had grown to 42 permanent residents, with applications from another 100 pending approval. Commander Chen arrived with a delegation from the academy, including several of Maria's former instructors who'd thought she was insane. They watched in amazement as she led them through a thriving settlement that shouldn't exist. You changed everything, Chen said during a quiet moment. They stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the sunset paint the violet forest in shades of amber and gold. Deathworld colonization is now the Academy's fastest-growing field. We have 3 new courses based entirely on your methods. I just went camping and refused to die, Maria said with a smile. You did more than that. You proved that adaptation beats technology, that understanding beats force, that there's no such thing as an uninhabitable world, just worlds we haven't learned to inhabit yet. Echo emerged from the forest, followed by his mate and their 3 cubs. The young Shadow Maws were half their father's size, but equally curious. They tumbled toward the settlement, playing with each other while Echo supervised. One cub approached Chen, sniffing curiously. The commander, to his credit, held perfectly still. Hello there, he said softly. The cub made a chirping sound and bumped its head against Chen's hand before scampering back to its siblings. Unbelievable, Chen breathed. Absolutely unbelievable. That evening, Maria made her final vlog for the year. She set up her camera in the plaza with the festival happening around her. Colonists and visitors mingled, sharing food and stories. Echo's cubs played with human children in a scene that would have been impossible a year ago. Day 365, final report from Cathara Prime. Maria looked into the camera with the same directness she'd shown from day 1. A year ago, I landed on a planet everyone said would kill me. They weren't entirely wrong. Cathara Prime is dangerous, demanding, and unforgiving of mistakes. She gestured to the thriving community around her. But it's also beautiful, abundant, and willing to accept those who respect it. We've built something here that I never imagined possible, a true partnership between multiple species and an alien world. A human child ran past, chased by a young shadow maw in what was clearly a game. Both were laughing in their own ways. The lesson isn't that humans are special or superior. The lesson is that every environment has its own logic, its own rhythm, its own rules. Success comes from learning those rules, not from forcing your own. Whether you're exploring a new planet, starting a business, or just trying to navigate life, adaptation beats domination every single time. Echo settled beside her, massive and protective. His cubs climbed over him like a jungle gym. To everyone watching this, there are no death worlds. There are only worlds we haven't learned to understand yet. Don't be afraid of the unknown. Be curious about it, respect it, learn from it, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find home in the last place anyone expected. She smiled at the camera. This is Lieutenant Maria Santos, signing off from the Cathara Prime colony. Stay curious, stay adaptable, and remember, the best view comes after the hardest climb. The recording ended with Maria being swept into a dance by James, while Echo's cubs attempted to imitate the human movement with varying degrees of success. In the background, Cathara Prime's 3 moons rose above the settlement, bathing everything in silver light. The next morning, Maria woke to a message from Earth's colonial administration. 17 new Death World colonization missions were being organized, all requesting her input on crew selection and survival protocols. She sat on the porch of her home, a comfortable structure built from local wood and stone, and sipped her morning tea. The beverage was a blend, earth mint mixed with a local plant that added a pleasant spice. Echo emerged from the forest and settled beside her, a comfortable routine they'd established months ago. His cubs followed, along with James carrying data pods and Rel discussing infrastructure expansion plans. This was her life now. Not fighting a hostile environment, but living in partnership with it. Not conquering a death world, but learning its language and becoming fluent. Maria pulled out her communicator and began responding to the colonial administration's request. She had a lot of knowledge to share and a galaxy full of impossible places that were waiting to prove they were actually just misunderstood. The adventure was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. But that, as they say, is a story for another day.